Do you remember the Oscar-winning movie Rain Man? Dustin Hoffman won an Oscar for his character, autistic Raymond Babbitt. I'm not that bad, but I have Asperger's syndrome. For the most part, I'm just like you, just a little quirky. Okay, a lot of quirky. We Aspies can't decipher social cues. Most people understand that if the person you're talking to yawns and looks at their watch, it's time to leave. People with Asperger's are unable to connect with this. We are very literal, logical, and methodical. You all know people with Asperger's syndrome. We are computer nerds, rocket scientists, weirdo programmers. Remember Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory? I'm pedantic. As a CNN commentator once wrote, we usually have no expression on our faces or in our speech. I can't look you in the eyes. I have learned to look at people's mouths or noses. I can't hold a conversation with you for more than a few words, but I can lecture you on the topics of the U.S. atomic bomb tests, the Pittsburgh steelworkers, Doberman puppies, or medieval society. We do well in school because we always follow the rules. We also make good employees if we are given specific tasks and goals, but overall we make lousy bosses or managers. Why a whole week of vacation because my mother died? The funeral takes only one day. Yes, maybe your boss wasn't a complete idiot, but just an Aspie. My parents died when I was young, but I was a constant source of surprise and confusion to my grandparents. They raised 6 children, but none of them were constantly in the principal's office like I was. This was mainly due to the issues I raised in class, such as, if this week is anti-bullying week, then what happened last week? Why, in the event of a fire, should we calmly line up in one line from the smallest to the tallest? Do tall people really burn slower? Why does Black History Month take place in February, the shortest month of the year? Although I was an excellent student and never had any serious problems, even receiving a scholarship to college, my grandfather often shook his head, muttering, "There's something wrong with this boy." I never dated in high school, unable to understand the mind games and mental gymnastics that girls subjected teenage boys to. Instead, I read everything. Grandfather, being a practical man and also an old military man, bought me a prostitute for my 18th birthday. I was delighted with the gift, as any teenager would be, and made a permanent arrangement with the girl when I had the means to afford her charms. No good deed goes unpunished. This is how my first big novel happened. I was filling up the gas tank near the local shopping center before starting my Meals on Wheels route for seniors. No, I'm not some good boy. It was community service that I chose as part of my scholarship package. I chose Meals on Wheels because I didn't have to deal with other employees. Once I started working, I discovered that people are an interesting group. These seniors survived the Great Depression, fought in a world war, defeated fascism and then communism, and turned our country into the greatest economic power the world has ever seen. I loved hearing them talk about everything from making moonshine and gin in the bathroom while escaping from their henchmen, to storming the beaches in Normandy and fighting for trade union rights. It was like having my own set of living history books, but even better because they were interactive and I could ask questions, and this was no less important to them. They loved to tell stories to anyone who would listen. Anyway, I was paying the seller for fuel when a young girl ran past, being chased by 2 guys. One of them was a big guy and the other was a smaller guy. A Mutt and Jeff combination, if you will. This trio circled my car several times, still parked at the pump. Suddenly, a girl jumped into my car and blocked the doors. Mutt and Jeff called her names while pounding on the hood and roof of my car. The store clerk was on the phone with 911 when I quickly approached the scene of the altercation. "Hey, you two," I said to the guys, who were still screaming at the trapped woman, making significant dents in the body of my car. "Move away from my car." The smaller man, whom I mentally named Mutt, looked up at me. "This is your car?" he declared authoritatively. When I didn't answer, Mutt continued, "Open it, asshole, so we can get this bitch." "Nothing of the sort," I replied. "We'll wait for the police, who are already on their way. I need a report for the insurance company. Plus, your data will be needed since both of you are responsible for compensation for damage to the body. I want you to know that this is my grandmother's car, and she kept it in perfect shape. There wasn't a single scratch on it, and I washed it every Saturday at 5 p.m. with a premium wax called Mother's. "Shut up, idiot," interrupted the bigger guy, Jeff, and then, pointing to himself, continued, "The police are already here, so unlock this pile of junk now." I looked at Matt and Jeff. They weren't wearing any uniforms, and there weren't any badges visible. "Can I see some government identification or badge, please?" The smaller mutt moved towards me. "We don't have time for this shit," he muttered to his partner, and then grabbed my arm, trying to twist it into some kind of painful hold. Here I need to give a little history. Children with Asperger's syndrome are often bullied because our physical coordination comes late, making us the last choice for any team in PE class. Add in an inability to respond appropriately to teasing and sarcasm. Well, you get the idea. To combat this, I was enrolled in martial arts from an early age to help my coordination and confidence and to give me the ability to deal with bullies. It took several classes before I came to the conclusion that the best discipline for my training was a modified version of Aikido. This is due to the fact that the Aikido that I was taught was based mainly on reactions to the opponent's movements. They were afraid that I would underestimate or overestimate the threat, so it was drilled into me that I could not react until someone physically touched me. I liked this red line because I generally don't like being touched. It also fits my Asperger's black and white view of the world. Thus, words, ridicule, and the like could be ignored, but I could react to physical actions. So, 3 times a week and on Saturdays, I constantly visited the local Aikido establishment, and it became a second home for me. Now back to the present, where Mutt's face showed surprise as I parried his arm grab with a move I had practiced in Aikido class 1,000,000 times for over a decade. Dropping to one knee, I spun around under his arm and deftly used my weight and his momentum to throw Mutt over my shoulder onto his back, knocking the wind out of him. Jumping to my feet, I declared, "You touchied me first. Please don't do it again." The girl in the car screamed. Behind, I turned to see big guy Jeff rushing towards me with open arms, head down and shoulders hunched, ready for a classic football kick. "Wow, this looks like my last belt test," I thought as Jeff's massive fingertips began to close on my hands. I fell backwards quickly, raising my leg at the same time to kick Jeff in the stomach. Grabbing his outstretched forearms, I pulled his upper body down, continuing to fall backwards. As we continued down, I pushed off with my foot still pressed against Jeff's stomach. He was turned upside down and crashed into a gas station. I rolled to a standing position. I heard a woman's laughter and saw that the girl had the window in my car halfway down. "Ha ha 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 ha, you two big assholes can't even handle one young boy. You need to find a few more of your asshole friends before you get hurt." This was followed by more of her laughter and ridicule. But I wasn't laughing. These guys showed no signs that they were going to stop touching me. Moreover, big man Jeff immediately jumped to his feet, taking out what looked like a stun gun. I could see blue sparks between the double prongs and hear electronic crackling. We never trained against a stun gun in class, but I decided to treat it like a sharp weapon. I dodged and weaved to avoid Jeff's stun gun. When I finally got him in the right position, I moved to his right side and hit the bottom of his elbow upward while moving the wrist holding the stun gun down. Jeff screamed as his stun gun hand plunged into a bucket of windshield wiper fluid and a windshield scraper. I don't know the exact chemical properties of the windshield wiper fluid used at that gas station, but apparently it conducts electricity. More than 1,500 volts of electricity from the stun gun hit Jeff's exposed, wet skin. As it swept through his body, Jeff was unable to release his grip on the stun gun and fell to the ground, his hand still in the bucket, and his torso and limbs shaking violently. Turning around in time, I almost fell under the blow of Mutt, who was holding some kind of folding baton in his hands. I jumped over Jeff, who was still convulsing on the ground, and pulled a wooden-handled scraper out of the bucket. Mutt must not have used this club very often, because it was quite easy to parry his blows. He lost his grip on the baton when I used the T-end of the scraper to hook his ankle and yank him upward, causing Mutt to lose his balance and fall on his butt. Laughter came from the girl in my car, but stopped when Mutt lifted his pant leg to reveal his ankle holster and then pulled out a .38 caliber pistol. "Stop, idiot!" Matt barked, standing up. "I am not kidding. In class, we practiced defense against weapons many times. The exercise was run away from a knife but rush at a gun. Conventional wisdom is that a knife at a distance can't hurt you, but a gun can, and you need to get to the shooter. But all this was with paintball weapons. Sure, a paintball burns when it hits you, but this was a real weapon. The instructors claimed that the method was the same. We were also taught that almost all shooters shoot high, so I closed the distance between me and Mutt by keeping my shoulder low. 2 shots rang out. Then the back window of my car shattered, and the panicked screams of the girl in my car were heard. Mutt was stunned when I came out of my role and jumped right in front of his face. He gasped as I pinched the points on his wrist and elbow and then tore the gun from his paralyzed hand. Just at that moment, 2 subway patrol cars with flashing lights and sirens arrived. The car doors swung open and officers with drawn pistols pointed at us and commanded me to drop my weapons. I dropped the gun and raised my hands up when someone hit me on the back of my knees. As I fell to the ground, I saw Mutt's leg move as he kicked me in the head, and everything went black. I'll spare you the details, but I spent over 24 hours in a prison cell after Matt and Jeff handcuffed me to a chair and beat me to a pulp. It wasn't like in the movies because they didn't let me make a phone call and they didn't tell me, "You have the right to remain silent," like they do on TV police shows. I think Matt and Jeff really were police because they were the ones who beat me while I was handcuffed to the chair. The rest of my stay in the cell was not too bad. The other prisoners did not bother me. Sure, beating 2 cops earns respect in some circles. On the second day, the jailers, who had been indifferent to me until that moment, began to get very nervous. Some of them tried to emphasize that they personally treated me no differently from other suspects and had nothing to do with what happened before I came into their custody. "Anthony," the jailer barked, opening the cell door. "Please come with me." Having crossed the threshold of the cell, I was surprised to see a girl hiding in my car with an elderly, respected gentleman. My jailer shifted from foot to foot after leading me to this couple. "Here you go, Judge. Your Honor." He is in good shape, as I said. We kept it safe and sound. The judge did not look or answer the jailer, but grabbed my chin with his hand, turning my head to examine my face. I lingered on the ugly bruise on my cheek, caused by Jeff hitting me several times with a phone book. The girl started taking pictures with her mobile phone. "Yes, in my opinion, he looks very good. How many guys did it take?" She looked at the bruises on my wrist from the handcuffs. "You all must have been very brave to beat up a man in handcuffs. The Führer would be proud of you." The judge waved his hand at both her and the jailer. "Enough." Then he turned to face me. "Come on, son. Let's play proctologist and tear some people's asses." With these words, the judge turned on his heels and began to leave. The girl and I followed him. We sat outside the police commissioner's office, watching as several bustling men in suits came in and out of the commissioner's office with forms and documents. I haven't seen the judge since he entered the commissioner's office. "Would you like to drink anything?" asked the woman who was the administrative assistant to the commission member. "Yes, watermelon juice, please," I replied. "Watermelon juice?" the assistant repeated. "You said anything," I replied. "I'm afraid we only have soda, tea, and coffee." "There's no watermelon juice," she said. I paused for a moment. "So, you didn't mean anything when you said it?" "You only have soda, tea, and coffee. This is misleading in the future." The girl intervened. "We'll both have soda, any kind." "Thank you." She pulled me towards a chair. "Calm down, dude. Are you a moron or what?" I answered, "I don't know what a moron is, but I was just trying to help this lady not be so vague in her messages. This is how wars start. In 1607 during—" "Wow, you're just stupid," she interrupted. "But cute. Now shut up. Or don't you want to find out what happened at the gas station after the cops arrived?" "I suppose you will tell me." Isn't that what you came to the police station for? She rolled her eyes. Okay, first of all, my name is Dawn. I pointed to the ID sticker on her shirt. But your badge says New Dawn. Yeah, technically my name is New Dawn. New Dawn, because my parents were into crystal energy, but you can call me Dawn, okay? Can I call you Tony? Yes, you can, because I can't control how you treat me, I replied. But if you call me Tony, I won't react, because my name is Anthony. Dawn giggled. Okay, Anthony. Look, I was being followed because these two thugs tried to arrest me for shoplifting. Did you steal from a store? Dawn looked at me. Yes, sure. As if a place as big as this could go under some petty crap. Do you know how little this corporation paid in taxes last year? And what kind of pennies are paid to the workers? Not to mention the foreign child slave labor used to make their things. What does this have to do with the fact that you stole goods from the store? This store is a franchise, so technically you were stealing from the franchise operator, which is a family-owned and operated store, not from a corporation. Whatever, Dawn said, waving her hand. Come on, aren't you mad that the entire city police department is a bunch of corrupt flunkies who get rich by sucking up taxpayer money? Look at those two Nazis who attacked you. They are a statistical error, I said. Dan looked puzzled. What? Statistical error. In every major organization, public, private, or religious, there are 11% of employees who are stars and provide about most of the income and growth. 86% do what is needed, when needed, no more and no less. Of the remaining 3%, there are 2% who are corrupt, a part of society where the end justifies the means. The last 1% is idle, dead wood. Historical kings, queens, princesses and princes, as well as trust fund kids, second generation, corporate executives, and most political leaders who have been in office for more than 8 years. I held up 2 fingers. I had the unfortunate circumstance of being, number 1, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. If everything had happened 10 minutes earlier, I would have avoided this event. 10 minutes later, I would never have found myself in this position either. The second is the fact that I had to deal with these 2 specific law enforcement officers, who are atypical of law enforcement officers in general. Dawn started to speak, but I raised my hand to interrupt her. The average income of a law enforcement officer is quite consistent with the average income of most employees, and it certainly doesn't come close to the definition of rich. They enforce the laws. If you don't agree with the law, change the law or those elected to make laws. Do not blame those who are entrusted with executing the law. And that's all I can say on this topic. Please continue to tell us how we got to this point. Dawn shook her head. You are an original. After the other cops arrived, they were so busy with you that I managed to sneak out of your car and hide at a gas station. I saw how a big and a small policeman went into a gas station and took away the video from the surveillance camera and then threatened the seller. She picked up her cell phone. The idiots didn't know that I was recording everything on my phone from the very beginning. They didn't identify themselves as cops when they attacked you first. I even filmed them threatening the seller. I saw all that food in your car with Meals on Wheels wrappers. So I called the number and explained what happened. She told them, as the song says, send lawyers, weapons, and money. Dawn looked at the commissioner's door. Did you know that the judge is the head of the board of directors of the Meals on Wheels organization? I nodded. Yes, he is also the chief judge of the district, and also the chairman of the political majority in this state. He spoke at my high school graduation. Dawn's eyes went wide. This explains a lot. Immediately after the call from Meals on Wheels, a bunch of state patrol cars showed up at the gas station. Your car was impounded and the clerk and I were taken to the judge's office. He was furious when I showed him the cell phone footage. It was like a king and his court. Although it was late at night when he called, people came. Guys in tuxedos from events, men and women of all stripes were brought in to find you. Dawn touched the bruise on my face. Those 2 bastard cops were going to lose you in the system, put off the paperwork until your bruises went away, and then it would be their word against yours about what happened. Not to mention the false charges of resisting arrest, assault, possession of a controlled substance, and a bunch of other things. You know they planted a bunch of meth in your car. Just at this time, the administrator answered the call, hung up, and turned to me. Anthony, please join His Honor in the office. Work in fact. Both officers were fired and charged. The city police commissioner was glad to get rid of them, since this was not their first raid. The police department also had a long list of complaints, but not a single irrefutable evidence. It turned out that they worked for the security of the shopping center, receiving salaries from the shopping center while on police duty. This alone guaranteed that they would be kicked out of the police force. Other officers involved were to be reprimanded for their participation. The commissioner, the district attorney, and the judge said they owe me a big favor. They were surprised when I asked that this favor not be used to punish other members. I was surprised that they could not understand that the other officers were only acting with the best intentions based on what Mutt and Jeff had told them. Their story was that my gang and I attacked them while they were apprehending a suspect. Apparently, we were protecting a stash house in my car. From this story, I learned that we are heading the way of the Roman Empire if the new centurions, cannot trust each other. I received a significant payment from the city police. I was raised with modest tastes and lived within my means, so money was never an important factor or issue in my life. I agreed to the money because even I knew a jury wouldn't look kindly on any government agency making up charges after the false arrest and beating of a disabled orphan. Yes, Asperger's is considered a disability, and a student receiving an honorary scholarship while delivering food to the elderly. A week later, Dawn showed up at my house. "Come on, Anthony," Dawn said, looking around my small apartment. "I heard you received a check from the police today. Let's tear this shit down, go somewhere, and celebrate." I looked around my one-room apartment. "Dawn, I have a bed, a table, and a small dining room, maybe a little Spartan, but clean and functional. But it's definitely not a dump." "Great," Dawn said irritably. "You live in the damn Taj Mahal. Now invite me to some nice place." "I deserve it, and today you and I will have fun." "I can't eat any of this," Dawn exclaimed, throwing down the menu. "We were at one of the best steakhouses in the city, a classic place where my grandparents would take me on holidays if the occasion was special enough and we had the means. There is the best beef, plus crabs or lobsters in season." I looked at Dawn over the menu. "What's wrong with the choice of meat?" She looked at me with disgust. "I'm a vegetarian," Dawn said, pointing to the menu. "Is it possible to eat anything in this restaurant that hasn't died a terrible death?" "Are you a vegetarian?" I asked, and she nodded. I remembered what my grandfather once told me and repeated, "You know, Dawn, the original meaning of the word vegetarian was bad hunter." Dawn pointed her finger at me. "You do not understand anything. Nature didn't design us to eat hamburgers." I quoted my grandfather again. "If nature didn't want us to eat hamburgers, then why did it make it so easy to catch cows? No one has heard of cheetah burgers." Dawn looked annoyed. Humans were never designed to eat meat. Our prehistoric ancestors ate almost entirely wild grains, fruits, and vegetables. I gave Dawn a puzzled look. "But you don't live in prehistoric times. If that were the case, you would already be dead because the average lifespan of a cave woman was less than 20 years. Cavemen lived 5 years longer." She waved her hand at me. "No one seems to know that our ancient cave dwellers were successful in hunting only 10% of the time. Hunting was dangerous, and you could break a bone, sprain your ankle, or get injured while hunting. A fast track to a quick death without medical care. Without greens and tubers, they would die of hunger." "Dawn, you're afraid of spiders, and I can't imagine you eating termites." She made a grimace. "Anthony, this is disgusting." I clasped my hands together and continued. "People who lived in caves got most of their protein by eating insects. There were a lot of termites, and they were 38% protein. One Venezuelan species, Sintermes aculeosus, is 64% protein. Termites are also rich in iron and calcium, essential fatty acids and amino acids, such as tryptophan. Dawn pulled me aside, waving the menu. People need to go back to basics, like our ancestors. Not all this industrial farming crap. Putting the menu aside, I continued. So we shouldn't use penicillin or antibiotics? Do surgeries without anesthetics? Back to the fact that the main killer of a woman was childbirth? No, Dawn replied. We must be more self-sufficient. She gestured around the room full of diners. I'm constantly worried about what all these people eat. I tried to consider her point of view, but she seemed stupid. Dawn. Worrying about what other people eat is like being angry at someone for eating a donut while you're on a diet. Dawn laughed and threw the menu on the table. I'll have a salad, but dessert is at my expense at your house. Sure? I asked, turning the menu to show Dawn pictures of the various desserts. Today's dish is homemade key lime pie with whipped cream, and I can't think of a better dessert idea. Okay. I was wrong. Dawn's idea for dessert was much better than key lime pie. Also, I was never allowed to eat key lime pie 3 times in one evening. You haven't had many relationships with women, have you? Dawn said, cuddling up to me as we lay naked on my bed. I raised one finger. Dawn looked at me and sighed. It's okay, I myself only had 3 serious relationships. But I've had sex more than once, I protested, thinking about my escort friend. Oh, you mean sex, Dawn exclaimed. That's another matter. I had sex with more than 3 guys. With how many? I asked. I don't remember, she said, looking at the ceiling. But I didn't meet a new guy every month. Okay, if you don't remember, I can count for you, I offered. You started having sex at 17, as expected, right? Dawn hesitated. Well, yes, let's say at 17. I started counting the numbers. A sexual partner every 2 months for 5 years is 30 men. Wow, so many guys. After a moment's pause, I added, I don't think I even know 30 guys. Dawn threw a pillow at me. This cannot be. The average woman has 23.9 sexual partners before marriage, although most women admit that they have had no more than 10. The average age of a modern bride is 29 years old. You can see for yourself. Therefore, your behavior will be considered 1.25 times more promiscuous than the average for your age. At your age and current developmental trajectory, you will have sex with over 70 men before you get married. This is much higher than the basic level. I looked at her. Don't you consider yourself a slut? Dawn narrowed her eyes on me. You call me a slut. We just had sex and now you're calling me a slut. I was confused. Sorry, I'm not calling you a slut. I'm just asking a question. You seem upset and I didn't want to upset you. I tried to explain my condition at dinner. The unspoken emotional undertones that most people take for granted are mysterious and invisible to me. My forgetfulness makes me feel bad, and I never know exactly how or where I went wrong. Dawn relaxed, placing a finger on my chest. It's okay, Anthony. I'm not a slut. She started moving her head down my body. But I can become your whore. It seemed logical that if Dawn was my girlfriend, then she should live with me. We couldn't live together in my small apartment, so I bought a bigger place. Fortunately, payments from the police made it possible for me to afford a bigger apartment. Money was never my #1 priority, but Dawn seemed to enjoy all the things it could buy. I studied mathematics and accounting. I loved mathematics, but my grandfather said that I needed to get a profession, and people always need accountants. I don't know exactly what Dawn studied in college. She was always involved in some kind of rally or protest on campus, whether it was Gays for Metric, Native Idiot Rights, or Stop Animal Testing of Condoms. I never followed them, but Dawn enjoyed every demonstration and march. But if it made her happy, it made me happy. On that note, I was determined to please Dawn in bed, so I did what I always did, and did extensive research on everything related to women's sexual pleasure. I scoured online forums, magazine articles, videos, and best-selling books. I even paid for a session to interview my escort friend. No, I didn't do anything with her. I have a girlfriend now. Wow, Dawn exclaimed, turning red in the face and falling back onto our bed. What made you come up with this? I put the toy back in the bedside drawer before answering. She was recommended to me by a clerk from the Pleasure Palace. She even took me into the back room to demonstrate how to use it properly. My research has shown that this is one of the most highly rated devices. Dawn stared at me for a minute before bursting out laughing. You are the only guy in the world who says with an honest face that watching the sexual pleasures of a stranger is research, and I believe you. Dawn got pregnant, which upset me. Not because she now has a child, but because it disrupted the linearity of our relationship. Dawn didn't seem to care that the conventional path was courtship, living together, marriage, and then children. It took me 2 weeks to convince Dawn of my logic and bring her to the courthouse. It was a great year for me because 2 great things happened. Dawn married me, and most importantly, our daughter was born. With the birth of our daughter, our first real quarrel began. Dawn wanted to give birth at home with a midwife. Anthony, I don't want our daughter to be born in some place full of sick people. I want our child to be born here, in a place of love, next to the bedroom where she will live and the kitchen where she will grow. Dawn, you don't even like cooking in the kitchen, but you want to have a baby here? With the arrival of a girl in my life, everything seemed wonderful. I learned all about proper parenting again. I sought advice and information from the best child psychologists and child care specialists who were at the university. Dawn began to get upset at my constant nagging that it was obvious that she was not raising our daughter correctly. Soon Dawn simply left raising the child mostly to me. I don't want to say that Dawn was a bad mother, she was just tired of me, constantly taking our daughter to the zoo, concerts, aquarium, etc. I felt that it was my duty to introduce and stimulate my baby to plus. Dawn was still involved in campus activities. The next decade flew by. After receiving my doctorate, I began working on Wall Street. An important person from one of the large hedge funds recruited employees from various fields, such as mathematics, theoretical physics, and engineering. He wanted people who were, as he put it, geniuses who could multiply 2 by 2 and get 5. I found great fun in this, a giant 3D puzzle. On Wall Street, under various accounting and investing rules, we could make 2 and 2 equal 9. We were all paid a lot of money for this Rubik's Cube arithmetic, but I didn't care about bonuses, raises, and salaries because I never wanted to be rich. It is true what they say is that a poor man wants to be rich, and a rich man wants to be a king, but the king will not rest until he has everything. Besides, as far as I understood, this whole Wall Street thing was a big rigged game. However, if money made Dawn and my daughter happy, I was happy. It never occurred to me that Dawn might be cheating on me. We both had a few late nights, but Dawn continued her activist work, now on a larger scale. This time she was saving the environment. For some time she was involved in saving endangered animals. You know, Anthony, that the reason that whales almost became extinct is man. Humans are the most dangerous predator the blue whale faces. Dawn, although this is a true statement, it is not entirely accurate. They are the largest mammals on the planet. What other predators do blue whales have? Pelicans with machine guns, lions on jet skis. I also failed to see her logic in climate change. Dawn, don't you see anything strange about driving to the Save the Planet rally in a huge Cadillac Escalade? Dawn gave me a look that I couldn't decipher. Anthony, this is a hybrid, and they are very economical. For example, when I stop the SUV for more than a few seconds, the engine turns off to save fuel. Down. My grandfather must have been ahead of his time. Many years ago, he had a car whose engine would turn off whenever he stopped for more than a few seconds, I replied. Anthony, you don't understand. This is about our carbon footprint. I opened a web page on my laptop. The resources that went into your Cadillac Escalade, not to mention those required to dispose of the hybrid battery, create a huge carbon footprint the size of Bigfoot. Dawn raised her hands before answering. What do you want your wife and child to drive around in a Volkswagen Jetta? Well, this is one of the safest cars, and the diesel model far exceeds the mileage of your hybrid SUV. Plus, we never fought. I didn't see the point. but I couldn't understand why Dawn needed so much stuff. She would buy these ugly designer brand dresses and always show them off and say, "This looks so much better on." I thought, on what? On fire? But he knew it was better to hold his tongue. When Dawn gave birth to our son, I was over the moon. I don't know who was more happy about the arrival of a new boy, his older sister or me. However, a few years later, the housing bubble burst, and then life went downhill, at least as far as Dawn was concerned. Continued in the next video. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss the second final part. The link to the second part will be in the description of this video below.